Building a D&D world may sound daunting, but there's a secret formula that all settings follow. You might start by creating a bunch of factions, a vast open wilderness to hexcrawl, but something's missing, and for some reason the players don't seem to care. Well, that might be because your world and your story aren't helping each other tell a story together. But how do you do that? Well, just remember this one neat trick. Every D&D setting is actually a post-apocalyptic setting. Welcome to Mystic Arts, where I try to convince you that D&D has like 30 different hats. My name is Daði, I'm a professional writer and director, and I've been DMing for over 10 years. So what do I mean by every D&D setting is post-apocalyptic? Well, just think about it. The Forgotten Realms, it's in the name. The lands are littered with forgotten realms that are now gone and, forgotten, like the Netherese Empire and their flying cities. Eberron, a little different. The apocalypse is more recent. The last war just ended and the world is still reeling from the cataclysmic consequences. Ravenloft. Yeah, even Ravenloft. It used to be free from Strahd's influence, but now it's stuck in this literal shadow domain of dread and awfulness. The scarcity in that setting is a scarcity of joy. The pattern is everywhere. Your favorite settings work because they're built on the bones of something older, something lost. And once we understand why it works, you'll be able to recreate that formula to create a brand new world out of it. When you start thinking of D&D worlds as post-apocalyptic, the themes almost write themselves. The most obvious one is lost knowledge. Everywhere you go, there are ruins of cities that knew things that we don't know now. Libraries burned, languages forgotten, rituals that once lit the skies, now surviving only as fragments carved on broken walls. The present feels smaller because the past was bigger. Sauron was the shadow of Morgoth. That sense of absence is powerful because it drives both mystery and adventure. When your players pick up a scroll they can't read or see a machine that no one knows how to repair, they're not just asking, what does this do? They're asking, who were the people that built this? And what happened to them? And those questions draw them deeper into the world. Post-apocalyptic storytelling breeds questions, which in turn breeds interest, which is the fundamental building block of investment. Your players will be more invested when they're asking questions they want to know the answer to. Why don't my players care about my world? Maybe you can make them care by surrounding your world in mystery. Not completely, but enough for there to be questions to ask and answers to be found. If the mystery is totalitarian, then people will check out. Oh, we'll never know? Pull out my phone. Instead, make them want to know. When you think about magic items in D&D, they tell you something important about the world. You usually don't buy them off of shelves like you find in the grocery store. You find them buried in ruins, sealed in vaults, or clutched in the hands of long-dead kings. Hell, we call them artifacts, like something Indiana Jones would find on one of his adventures into ancient tombs. That tells you something right away. The people alive today aren't the ones who made them. They are relics from a bygone age. Fossils of a world that used to stand taller than the one we're in now. Like a post-apocalyptic setting. We're looting, and that's exactly what makes them exciting. An ancient sword with a name like the Moonblade is evidence. Someone forged it, someone wielded it, someone lost it. And then finding it again, your party is holding a piece of history. That sword says there was a time when civilizations had the knowledge, the craft, the divine blessing to create wonders, and that time is gone. You can give them clues about their maker, what metal was used, what maker's mark is stamped on the pommel, how it glows like the mostly forgotten stories say they would. Even one little detail, like that tells your players that the item didn't appear out of a vacuum. It's a clue that the world used to be different, a relic of history. A lot of digital ink has been spilled talking about how to make magic items feel special, which features are good, etc. But to me, what makes them special is the scarcity. You don't need to starve your players of loot. But when every magic item has a clear origin and a reason to exist, it feels like archaeology instead of grocery shopping. Each relic is a story, and it makes your world feel scarred, lived in, and worth exploring. I often find magic shops a little insulting. I've done them, mind you, but to me they don't feel anywhere near as good as when you find an item on the adventure. Shops kind of bypass the story. It kills the artifact and makes it a line item in a catalog. And if you want to go one step further, think about crafting. In a post-apocalyptic world, people aren't inventing new relics from scratch. They're forging the fragments of what came before. Like Anduril is forged from the shards of Narsil. But then someone made Narsil. Telchar of Nogrod during the First Age, and now it's a relic from a bygone age, and we can't just make a new one, but we can reforge the old one. The Lord of the Rings is very post-apocalyptic, actually. This post-apocalyptic idea also comes in the form of dead gods. In a world that's already collapsed once, it's easy to believe some malevolent power caused it. Maybe a pantheon betrayed its worshippers. Maybe an archdemon burst through the cracks of reality. Maybe the gods didn't fall, they just abandoned us. Whatever you choose, it frames the world as one small, fragile little moment, standing on top of a disaster that could easily repeat itself. It creates tension, those questions we want answers to. Why do we want the answers? Because it's the only way to stop the world from destroying itself again. History teaches us about the future, and then, at the heart of it all, you've got ordinary people just trying to figure things out. Farmers planting new crops in the shadow of broken towers. Scribes trying to reconstruct the calendar from half-legible records. That's what grounds the epic scale of D&D. When your players see the struggles of everyday folk in a scarred world, they're reminded of what's at stake if the next apocalypse comes. So the themes of a post-apocalyptic setting aren't just gloom for its own sake. They are a way to make the world feel textured and lived in. Knowledge is fragile. Power is dangerous. The gods aren't necessarily benevolent. And the people who live here are just trying to carry a little light forward. Those are the ideas that turn a dungeon crawl into a story about survival, discovery, and hope. D&D as post-apocalypse is nowhere near as obvious as when you look at the historical inspiration it draws from. Medieval fantasy is so perfect for world building because the actual Middle Ages were defined by the collapse of something greater, the fall of Rome. Rome had roads, aqueducts, centralized government, trade across continents, and when it went away, Europe didn't bounce back immediately. It shrank and shriveled. Knowledge was lost, infrastructure crumbled, and whole generations grew up not knowing what had been normal centuries earlier. That's what gives the Middle Ages their texture, the sense of living among ruins. They could see evidence of a more advanced world, but they didn't know how to recreate it. I mean, we literally couldn't figure out how Romans made concrete for ages. And that's exactly the feeling D&D settings thrive on. And it gets worse for medieval peasants. I mean, when didn't it? Because on top of all of that collapse came wave after wave of catastrophe. The Black Death killed a third of Europe. The 100 Years' War dragged on for, 116 years. Feudal barons squabbled and killed, while ordinary people tried to survive. And yet, out of all of that scarcity and violence come stories. Stories of knights, saints, rebels, and adventurers. That's the same paradox D&D taps into. The world is scarred and dangerous, but that's exactly what makes it fertile ground for legends. When you look for inspiration, don't think of the Middle Ages as the static default setting. Think about what makes it work. Deconstruct that age of ruin, survival, and reinvention. And imagine it could happen again in a way that's unique to fantasy settings. And then you lean into it. So how's this useful to us Dungeon Masters? Well, it's a story structure. History is a blueprint for you to build worlds out of, because once you accept that every D&D world is post-apocalyptic, you suddenly have a roadmap for your own creation. You don't have to invent 1,000 years of history up front. You just need 3 beats: a height, a fall, and a shadow. The height is the great empire that existed before all of this. Maybe it's several empires. You could decide it's an elven empire that spanned the continent with glittering spires. Maybe it's an age of industry when dwarven artifice almost mimicked modern society. Or, a common trope, the gods once walked the earth and great miracles were commonplace. Whichever one you pick, it's an evocative moment to learn about as your players delve into dungeons. A moment when the world was bigger, brighter, and more dangerous. The fall is the catastrophe that ended the height. You have got an endless menu of options to pick from here. Was it a great war that ravaged the world and killed millions? A dark plague that blighted the world and crops and caused famine and killed millions? A demonic incursion that split kingdoms apart and the armies of demons killed millions? No matter what you pick, millions died. That's just good storytelling. Whatever it was, it has to explain 2 things. Why magic items are found in ruins, and why today's world feels smaller than yesterday's. The shadow is how this setting turns into a story that your players will care about. When you start playing, you describe the height. That's the hope in the campaign. As players play, they learn about the fall, how everything collapsed and who was responsible. And then you create a threat that can repeat the fall. It's easiest if that shadow is the same as the cause of the fall. So if the last empire fell to war, who's building an army today? If plague ended the height, what horrible rituals threaten to bring it back about again? If demons broke through once, who's out there trying to call them back? Doing this, you find that the present shadow becomes this haunted age driving at a horrible endpoint. Everyone is painfully aware of what was lost and afraid of repeating it. And this is where your players get hooked because nobody can stop it. It's a foregone conclusion, except if your players stop it. They become the nexus around which the knowledge of the height, fall, and shadow converge, and you put the fate of the world in their hands. You can do that, for instance, by creating the villain first and planning your campaign backwards to the front of the adventure. It's easy. Of course, you can also run an actual post-apocalyptic setting, not just one that dresses up like one. Like if you want it to be D&D but Mad Max, you can do that. The Scorched BASIN Kickstarter, the sponsor of today's video, is wrapping up right now, and it's your last chance to get in on it. It's got rules for driving junker vehicles, unique magic, and a setting that exists in the fallout of an actual apocalypse. You should check them out, and if you back them after using the link in the description or the pinned comment, you're supporting this channel directly. Now obviously, you don't have to run your games in a post-apocalyptic world. D&D is flexible. You can set a campaign anywhere you want, even in Utopias. Strixhaven, for example, is a magical university setting that feels more like Harry Potter than the Dark Ages. On the surface, it's thriving, optimistic, full of learning, but even there's tension that comes from the possibility of collapse. The storylines revolve around threats that could drag this bright little pocket of utopia back into a darker age. Waterdeep is another good example. It's one of the most advanced cities in the Forgotten Realms. The streets are lit with magic, the markets are bustling, and there is a working banking system of all things, but of all of that prosperity rests on scars from the past. The walking statues that loom over the city aren't just cool landmarks, they're weapons built for an older war. A reminder that this isn't the first time Waterdeep has faced disaster. Even if you're drawing from cowboy westerns, like I suggested in the past, the same pattern holds true. The American frontier, for example, didn't emerge in a vacuum. It was shaped by the ruins of a civil war, a country that's trying to rebuild itself while expanding into new territory. The gunslinger towns and railroad camps of that era only make sense against the backdrop of collapse. So, yes, you could put your campaign in a thriving city, a school, or even a utopia, but those settings still feel alive because they're haunted by what came before and the shadow of what may come again. They all carry the same truth. Every D&D world is standing on the bones of an older one. You can layer these as well. I've talked about a fractal campaign setting in a single world and layering them on top of one another. You can make each of those worlds have different apocalypses with different apocalyptic scenarios. That way, every setting is dealing with the scars of the past, and their response to those apocalypses in their current culture defines them. That's where you make your national differences come from. So that's how you bring it together. Every D&D setting works because it's built on the bones of something older. Forgotten empires, forgotten wars, fallen gods that broke the world. That's the secret ingredient. When you lean into that, you unlock themes of mystery, scarcity, and survival that hook your players immediately. As a dungeon master, you can use this structure, a height, a fall, and a shadow, to create an outline of a world that feels unique as you deploy it. Ravenloft, the Forgotten Realms, and Eberron feel very different, but all of them follow this formula to some degree. You can do the same. All the pros do it. Mix the time frames, the ruins, the factions, the bad guys, and you'll create something unique to your table. And then you'll hook your players into caring about your world by making the world be the story. Don't overbuild your world, break it, scar it, leave questions unanswered, and let your players dig for the truth. And that's what makes them invested, because every adventure becomes a piece of archaeology, and every answer feels like survival. And that's where we'll pick it up next time. Thanks so much for watching this video. This channel is run by me and my girlfriend, and if you want to support us directly, consider joining our Patreon and pick up our magic item creation rules to pair perfectly with the advice in this video. If you're feeling especially generous, you might like the video, comment, share, or subscribe, and hit the bell to be notified when we release new videos. Until next time, keep studying the mystic arts.